Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The head of Royal Bank of Scotland says its return to profit for the first time since it was bailed out by the government in 2008 is a really symbolic moment. RBS, a majority of which is still owned by the taxpayer, made an annual profit of £752 million in 2017, compared with a loss of nearly £7 billion the year before. Our economics editor Kamal Ahmed reports.
Faced with one of the biggest crises since the Second World War.
Response to the global financial crisis.
For RBS, the government will take up to £15 billion.
It was an astonishing time. A global, risky bank on the verge of collapse. Customers unsure if they could withdraw their own money. A rescue plan funded by the taxpayer to save the economy. A decade on, after years of losses, the man at the helm of a partially revived RBS said he believed the worst was behind them.
This is actually very symbolic. I think not just for our colleagues at work, but also for the UK, who did put a lot of money into this bank, and we've been restructuring it. We've been taking losses through conduct and litigation issues.
From the out-of-control RBS to the new, a focus on the simpler NatWest, which RBS owns, and selling off the riskier bits of that old bad bank after past bad behaviour.
A better day, a symbolic day for this bank, but it's a bank that is not out of the woods. Ahead is a huge fine from the American authorities over this bank's involvement in the mortgage crisis over there. Here, there's the continuing fallout from the terrible treatment of many small businesses. Yes, this year a profit, but the accumulated losses by this bank over the last decade, £58 billion.
RBS knows it is facing a tough 2018. It has set aside £3.2 billion to pay fines expected from America. And it will need to compensate those small firms it has mistreated. That could cost £400 million. That's why the share price went down today by 4%, despite the profits.
Will the taxpayer get their money back for bailing you out in the financial crisis?
It will take a number of years to come through. The government itself has said that they want to start that process in their fiscal year 18-19, and it'll take probably about 3 to 5 years for them to get down to a much smaller percentage of their ownership.
Mr McEwen said costs still had to be controlled and gave no guarantees on jobs or that more bank branches wouldn't be closed.
The British public have invested in RBS and supported it for the last 10 years. We'd like to see that support invested back into the local communities that RBS serves. And that starts with the bank branch closure programme, which we think should be slowed down and stopped.
A more positive time for RBS, but challenges ahead and a clear message. The taxpayer will not be getting his or her money back anytime soon. Kamal Ahmed, BBC News.
Now here, the Royal Bank of Scotland has become profitable for the first time in a decade, and they're hailing it as a really symbolic moment. The bank, which is still majority owned by the taxpayer, went from a £6.95 billion loss to a £750 million annual profit. Our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy, has been speaking to the RBS boss, Ross McEwen, and she's in central London now. So what has he been saying, Siobhan?
Well, Cathy, on the face of it, of course, it's good news that the bank owned by you and I is returning to health, and we might start to see some of that £45 billion bailout money return to us. But the bad news isn't all over yet. RBS still faces massive fines from the Department of Justice in the US for missold mortgages at the height of the financial crisis. That could run into billions. And here today, it revealed some rather embarrassingly large gender pay gap data. Women on average at the bank earning 37% less than their male counterparts. That jumps up to 64% when you consider bonuses. But really, Cathy, it was the huge anger sparked by the publication, finally this week, of a report into the bank's controversial restructuring unit, GRG, that really took the shine off today's profit number. It might be their first profit for a decade, but not everyone is celebrating. Mary Galbraith is one of thousands of small business owners who claim their livelihoods were ruined by the Royal Bank of Scotland's restructuring group, GRG.
trying to evict everybody. It wasn't right what they did to us.
The unit was supposed to help troubled businesses. Instead, many claimed they were run into the ground to help boost the bank's balance sheet, an allegation the bank denies. The city regulator, the FCA, commissioned a report into the GRG scandal in 2013, but only a summary of the report was made available. This week, MPs decided to publish the entire document, and it's what's inside the report that sparked such anger. It showed that a controversial email which instructed GRG workers to just hit budget and talked of giving customers enough rope to hang themselves was widely distributed and unchallenged by managers. That contradicts claims by the chief executive, Ross McEwen. Crucially, the summary report failed to highlight that in key areas, GRG's actions were intentional and coordinated.
Well, first off, I'm pleased the report is out because it has been leaked out in dribs and drabs, and I think it's really important that that full report was out. There is a complete link between the summary and the outworking. So if you go
but
through
the summary doesn't mention those words,
through the 350
Ross,
pages, you'll actually find the summary does link back to that.
Does the summary say it was an intentional and coordinated strategy?
If you go back to the report that came out of the FCA, the summary report, I think it does reflect back into it.
Does
and
it?
I think if you have a look at the report, yes, it does.
It doesn't say, as the full report says, that the behaviour of GRG was intentional and coordinated and a strategy, which is much more extreme and severe than you or the FCA had led us to believe.
Look, we've said all the way along that it's very hard reading for the bank. We did not get it right for our customers.
But why do you think that language was left out, both in the FCA summary and in your summary of it that day when we spoke?
You'd have to talk to the FCA.
You didn't use those words either last time I sat with you and talked about this, Ross, did you?
We did use the words that came out of the summary report from the FCA, which reflects the...
You did, but you actually yourself had that report. When were you given the full copy of the report?
The actual summary report does reflect the outworkings of a 350-page document. Look,
Lawyers are poring over that report, thinking that if they had that report, they could have used that to help the thousands of people that have tried to bring cases against RBS.
We've got about 1,200 customers who said, look, we don't believe we were treated fairly and we want to go through the process.
You have, but there were a lot more that were in GRG, weren't there?
Well,
who now see this report years on. I know you don't like this line of questioning, but they see this report years on and they think, hang on a minute, you know,
can we go back to the facts? Can we go back to the facts, please?
Can we go back to the facts? I've written the facts down.
Can we go back to the facts?
Yeah.
I'm saying we did not treat customers well when they were in GRG. And there is a process now in place where customers can go through.
Okay, let me just ask you about something that you yourself brought up to the Treasury Select Committee, the Just Hit Budget, the infamous Just Hit Budget memo that was written in 2009 that you said was not widely distributed and didn't form part of a GRG or RBS policy. The full report makes it very clear that that very memo was widely circulated in 2009 and 2010, and it was never challenged by any senior member of GRG or at the bank at all.
First off,
is that true?
The email, let's go back to the facts again. The email was found...
Those are the facts, Ross. You keep telling me to go back to the facts. I'm reading you facts from the report.
We did not hide anything. We put that there. That was in an area office.
You did, but your description of it is different, very different to the description that we see in the full report.
We were running many officers at the time that went to a couple of the officers from a middle management. It was not part of the strategy. I'm saying that report...
But the report says here that it was widely circulated and it was never challenged.
I'm not denying that that email was a disgraceful email. We are now getting back to actually dealing with customers, and that's what this bank should be doing.
Are you dealing with the problems of past customers?
Yes, we are. There is a complaints process.
So can you guarantee all those small businesses that have now this report that feel it would have helped them get some compensation by knowing categorically in black and white that this treatment was widespread, systematic, coordinated, intentional, that you will allow them to bring their cases to you now, even if they're out of statute?
If you quietly listen, those cases that were in GRG between 2008 and 2013, there is a complaints process that they can take it through.
Can I just ask you one last question? Your pay of $3.48 million for last year, fair enough, the bank is in a profit, but do you think that's an appropriate level for a bank that is still owned 70-odd% by the taxpayer and that still has some pretty murky, as we've just discussed, legacy issues to deal with that many would say aren't being dealt with?
You'd have to take that up with my chairman and the board.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
Well, we wanted to know what some of those small businesses affected by RBS thought of the chief executive's rather robust response. So we showed our interview to the businesswoman Mary Galbraith, who you saw in Siobhan's report. And I asked her first what she made of Ross McEwen's admission that customers haven't been treated very well.
He's absolutely right. He didn't treat customers well. It seems that he's still got this really aggressive stance against the report. He accepts it, but every time you try and talk about the detail of it, he doesn't accept the crucial points, which is that it was systemic, it was systematic, and it shows that the staff at GRG really did want to just make a profit and get as much as they could out of their customers.
Well, he says the most damaging allegations against the bank were contained in that summary report. What do you make of that?
Well, I saw the initial release of the report summary the FCA put out, and then I saw the latest full report, and that, as Siobhan has said, the significant paragraph that was the most damning paragraph was left out. Now, what does that say about RBS and the FCA's relationship? That really concerns me.
Why did that matter so much to you? Just explain to us why you needed to see that in full, why it mattered that the summary wasn't complete.
I think what is important is that businesses have been vindicated by this report. We thought we were in isolation. When we started to explain to people what happened to us, we perceived that we were on our own, and people thought that, obviously it was a time of difficulty and that we failed as a business. And that was quite hard to swallow, because we knew that at the time we had a good business. This report shows, yes, we all had good businesses and we were all working hard. What we didn't know is that the bank was on a different agenda than us.
What would you tell Ross McEwen if he was sitting in front of you right now?
Let's get this over and done with now. Let's not just prevaricate and go around and try and get one over the small businesses again, because that's how it feels.
Mary Galbraith, thank you very much.
Thank you.